That son of a bitch, you know, is really unbelievable.
Mr. Son of a bitch.
I mean,
Mr. Son of a bitch.
His royal. Yes, no, I never imagined that we'd ever have a president like this, and I hope we don't ever have another president like this again.
Anything to talk about. Kimmel was given each one of them was given a reset except for Seth. I didn't even know he was still on the air.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody did. Everyone's watching Forensic Files.
Yes.
Everyone's watching Seth.
One of the greatest shows ever.
Yeah, but these guys, they had opportunities to reset. Kimmel could have came back and tried to be funny again, or bring guests again, or show any kind of change, but they're really going to ride this out to the last drop.
If you thought daytime television couldn't melt down in real time, wait until you see what just happened. The View, the show that's made a career out of shouting down dissent, got hit where it hurts most live, on air, after Tyrus and Joe Rogan ripped the mask off their self-proclaimed moral authority. What followed wasn't just a clapback or another celebrity feud. It was an unfiltered collision between performance and truth. The clip spread like wildfire, and before anyone on that famous couch could sip their coffee, the nation was already watching them squirm. People weren't tuning in to hear another round of political quips. They came to witness the reckoning. And what they got was exactly that. It all started like any other weekday broadcast. The stage lights glowed, the audience applauded, and the hosts were ready to toss around the same playful jabs they always do, a mix of politics, pop culture, and just enough moral superiority to keep it spicy. But as the morning wore on, something in the air shifted. Phones were buzzing backstage. Producers were whispering. By the time the hosts sat down, the viral clip had already taken over the internet. Tyrus and Rogan had done the unthinkable. They'd gone straight at The View's reputation, dissecting the show with blunt honesty that daytime television isn't built to handle. Tyrus didn't hold back. He said out loud what millions of viewers have whispered for years, that The View stopped being a conversation and became a script, a megaphone for a single worldview. Joe Rogan agreed, and in typical Rogan fashion, he came armed with context, evidence, and that unmistakable confidence of a man who knows his audience is listening closer than anyone at ABC. Together, they exposed the cracks in the foundation. And when the footage hit social feeds, it wasn't just another online argument. It was a cultural spark. The kind that catches fast, burns hot, and leaves behind nothing but uncomfortable truth. When that episode of The View aired the next morning, you could feel the tension radiating from the screen. The hosts tried to carry on as usual, but their laughter had a nervous edge. Whoopi's sighs got longer. Joy's jokes fell flat. Sunny's glare said more than her words.
Don't you miss that feeling, getting lost in a story that feels like it was written just for you? If your heart needs a little magic, click on the link in iButton or in the description or pinned comment. It's waiting at infowebster.com. Go feel something again.
Everyone knew why they were upset, but they couldn't say it outright. They'd been called out, and for once, they couldn't control the narrative. The illusion of moral authority had been punctured, live and public, and there was no recovering. That with a clever quip or an audience cheer. Tyrus's takedown struck at the core of their entire brand. He said, "They call it The View, but there's only one view you're allowed to have." That one line hit like a thunderclap. It summed up years of frustration from viewers who'd grown tired of the show's selective empathy. Rogan took it further. On his podcast, he broke down clip after clip, moments where the hosts had moralized, judged, and spun issues to fit their narrative, only to contradict themselves weeks later. He didn't need to yell. The evidence spoke for itself. The View's polished facade of open dialogue began to look more like a performance routine. For years, the show thrived on outrage. It's the oxygen that keeps its engine running. Every morning, they choose a villain, a politician, a comedian, a tweet taken out of context, and build an entire moral crusade around it. It's not about debate, it's about dominance. One day they're lecturing about compassion, the next they're ridiculing someone for praying or voting differently. It's not an accident, it's the formula. And that's exactly what Rogan and Tyrus dismantled. They pointed out what the audience already knew in their gut, that authenticity had been replaced by applause lines. And when someone like Meghan McCain tried to challenge that dynamic, she was treated not like a colleague, but like an intruder. Every ideological difference turned personal. Every honest question became a confrontation. That tension, long ignored by producers, had finally boiled over, and now the world was watching it implode. What made the backlash hit so hard was that The View has a long history of dodging accountability.
The party, it's not the majority. It's the loud voices that scare people from saying what they believe and make you think twice about a joke or whatever, these things. And, a lot of their points are valid, but a lot of them are also just repulsive. And I mean, they repel people from, they go like, oh, you're no fun. I don't want to be around you.
From Joy Behar mocking Faith to Whoopi Goldberg's suspension after her controversial comments about history, every scandal follows the same pattern. Deflect, minimize, disappear for a few weeks, then return as if nothing happened. It's a cycle as predictable as it is exhausting. And for the first time, someone outside their ecosystem, Rogan and Tyrus, refused to let it slide. Rogan called out the double standard directly, how the hosts demand empathy for themselves, but rarely extend it to the people they criticize. He described it as moral theater, where outrage is curated and forgiveness is selective. The more he talked, the clearer it became that this wasn't about one show. It was about the wider media culture that thrives on moral superiority while abandoning sincerity. And then the moment came that pushed everything past the point of no return. During one of Rogan's podcast episodes, he played back The View's own footage, clips of them condemning misinformation, followed immediately by their own false claims about politicians and vaccines. The contrast was brutal. No commentary needed. He just let their own words indict them. When that episode went viral, it wasn't seen as an attack. It was a reality check. Meanwhile, Tyrus doubled down on television, describing the deeper issue. This isn't left versus right, he said. It's truth versus theater. He framed it not as partisanship, but honesty, a rare commodity in broadcast television. The simplicity of his point was what made it devastating. Viewers could feel that he meant it. He wasn't performing. He was reflecting what so many already felt, but never heard said out loud on TV.
I have one ex-wife. That's it. Okay. Okay?
Yeah, you tell
I had some scruples. Okay? I'll have one night stands, but I will not marry people I don't love, okay? There's a certain line there.
You can't teach this cracker that.
Behind the scenes, ABC was in crisis mode. Reports leaked that producers were scrambling, trying to decide whether to address Rogan and Tyrus publicly or pretend it wasn't happening. Either way, they'd lose. If they stayed silent, it looked like guilt. If they fired back, they risked proving their critics right. By the time the next episode rolled around, the tension was practically visible. The hosts tried to play it cool. Joy joked about late-night tough guys. Whoopi rolled her eyes and dismissed the chatter as online noise. But the laughter was brittle, and the silence between punchlines said everything. Then Sunny Hostin decided to go on the offensive. She accused conservative commentators of cherry-picking clips to fuel division. The audience reaction was immediate, a wave of uncomfortable groans. It was the moment the bubble burst. Even fans who usually sided with the show felt the disconnect. They weren't watching confident women standing their ground. They were watching hosts trying to outspin the truth. Rogan, never one to let an opportunity slip, responded that same night. On his podcast, he played their responses next to the evidence they were dismissing. He didn't mock them, he analyzed them. Calm, steady, deliberate. He pointed out that this was exactly what people had grown sick of, a media class that preaches accountability but never accepts it. He even coined a term for it, designer accountability. It meant they only believe in consequences when it benefits them. The phrase caught fire instantly. Memes, hashtags, viral threads, everyone ran with it. From that point, the balance of power shifted. Once upon a time, The View could shape narratives. Now, independent voices like Rogan's were doing it faster, cleaner, and with more credibility. The irony was painful. Daytime television hosts with millions in production budgets were being outmaneuvered by a guy sitting in front of a microphone. Rogan laughed about it on air, saying, "They're the biggest daytime show in America." I'm just one guy with a mic, and apparently, that's all it takes. That humility wasn't an act, it was the secret weapon. It made him relatable, believable, everything The View had lost. And when Tyrus appeared on Fox again to comment on Rogan's analysis, it was like the final puzzle piece snapping into place. He didn't need to coordinate. Their perspectives naturally aligned. The hypocrisy of legacy media, the emptiness of moral posturing, the audience's hunger for truth. Back in the ABC studio, panic was spreading. Insiders described the atmosphere as controlled chaos. The producers were split. Some wanted to keep ignoring the feud. Others wanted to strike back with a big segment about media responsibility.
If they're going to continue to do a podcast, they need to bring their writers in. Ooh. Because that was brutal.
Terrible. They're out of touch.
It's like listening to two billionaires complaining about no one had change for their $100 bill at McDonald's.
They chose the latter, and it backfired spectacularly. The next morning, Whoopi opened with a speech about online critics who profit from tearing down women, a not-so-subtle jab at Rogan. But her words didn't land. The audience clapped politely, but the energy was off. Even through the TV, you could feel it. The crowd wasn't convinced. Sunny tried to frame the backlash as a coordinated attack on women in media, but then Joy, never one to hold her tongue, muttered, "Didn't we start talking about him first?" The cameras caught the awkward pause, the sideways glances, the forced laughter. It was raw television, the kind they never intended to show. Viewers at home saw through it instantly. Off camera, the tension boiled over. Producers argued in hushed voices. Clips of Rogan's calm rebuttals were trending faster than their own show segments. Even their social media pages turned hostile. Longtime fans left comments calling them hypocritical, defensive, and out of touch. Within days, ABC quietly turned off comments on several posts, a move that only confirmed what everyone suspected. They couldn't handle criticism. Rogan noticed, of course. On his next episode, he smirked and said, "If your first instinct to criticism is to disable comments, maybe you've already lost the argument." The internet exploded. His calm confidence versus their reactionary. Panic became a meme in itself. Screenshots comparing his relaxed setup with their studio chaos told the whole story. Authenticity versus performance. Truth versus production. Even late-night comedians began to take notice, cracking jokes about The View's week of damage control. Former guests of the show joined in, some subtly shading the hosts, others outright mocking their inability to take what they dish out. One viral tweet read, "Imagine being called out by a podcaster and proving him right in the same week." It racked up millions of views before ABC's PR team even drafted a response. Behind the glass walls of their New York studio, the panic had turned to exhaustion. The hosts tried to reclaim the narrative by running a new segment called Fighting Back Against Misrepresentation, which ironically did the exact opposite. It made them look fragile, cornered, and more defensive than ever. When one of them asked mid-discussion, "Do people even believe us anymore?" there was a long silence. No one had an answer. That silence said what words couldn't. They'd lost control of the conversation.
All still love.
Right.
And they're just sizing each other up, trying to figure out which one of us has the best shot to get back with him.
Yes.
They all get together, they compare notes, and they tell each other, "Yeah, you should never mention his name again. You should never mention his name again. You should never." Does he call you? Doesn't call me? He texted me last week. "Oh, so I'm still in the game." That's all this was.
By now, the internet had turned the entire scandal into a cultural referendum. Hashtags like #Viewgate and #Designer Accountability trended for days. Commentators across political lines, left, right, and independent, agreed that The View had stumbled into the trap they'd set for everyone else. Their selective outrage, their performative empathy, their curated morality, all of it had been turned inside out. Tyrus went back on television and finished the job. He replayed the hosts' defensive comments side by side with their past clips of hypocrisy, laughing at politicians one moment, crying about respect the next. He didn't need to narrate. The footage spoke for itself. The same women who lectured others about tone were caught doing exactly what they condemned. The hypocrisy wasn't ideological anymore. It was psychological. It showed what happens when people start believing their own script. And that's when Rogan delivered the closing blow. On his podcast, he said, "If your show claims to be fearless, but collapses at the first real challenge, what does that say about the truth you're selling?" That question echoed far beyond entertainment. It became a cultural mirror. The public was no longer laughing at The View. They were questioning everything it represented. By the end of the week, even the show's loyal audience had shifted. The once unshakable fan base looked hesitant, divided. The emotional connection was broken. Because once people realize they're being preached to instead of talked to, they don't come back. Rogan didn't just win an argument, he exposed the foundation. And Tyrus, with his sharp humor and steady composure, turned that exposure into something permanent. What made it unforgettable wasn't the insults or the viral clips, it was the truth underneath it. The View's downfall in that moment wasn't about gender or politics or partisanship. It was about authenticity versus agenda. About who earns the right to speak for the people. Rogan didn't have the lighting, the studio audience, or the network backing. But he had something more powerful: trust. The final irony? The very thing The View built its empire on, controlling the narrative, became its undoing. You can't outspin authenticity. You can't choreograph credibility. Once the illusion cracks, it doesn't repair itself. It shatters. And in that wreckage, the audience made its choice. They didn't side with celebrity panels or corporate scripts. They sided with truth, even when it came from a microphone in a studio across the country. So in the end, who really got exposed? Not just the hosts sitting behind that glossy desk, but the entire system that props them up. The View didn't lose to Tyrus or Rogan. It lost to transparency. To a world that's finally done accepting performance as truth. And when the dust settled, one thing was clear: authenticity had won, and the audience wasn't going back.